video is going to document the disassembly of this hydraulic unit removed from a 1959 John Deere 2-cylinder 430 tractor. Specifically, it came from the standard model tractor. It's the part of the tractor that hydraulic power raises and lowers the 3-point lift arms on the back of the tractor. Our goal today is to get in the inside, replace gaskets, seals, kind of refurbish it, get it ready for paint. We're going to restore this tractor, so we want this unit to be tidy and leak-free as much as possible. I've started by removing some of the loose pieces like the control quadrant, lift arms, anything that is held on with nuts and bolts. I've cleaned some of the oil off with some solvent. Next step's going to be to use a wire wheel to loosen up any loose paint, rust, before we dig into the more sensitive inner pieces and parts. So with that, let's get cleaning. And here we are. Most of the heavy's cleaned off. I didn't go as in depth on the front cover. I have a broken piece in the casting here that I may have to go get one of my, dig through my parts piles and find a replacement for that. I've also got a broken bolt that is in this one, so I'm hoping we can get that out of the main hydraulic casting here without too much trouble. But in general, most of the paint, rust, loose stuff's cleaned off. It probably is a little bit overkill, but I guess I hold myself to a higher standard when it comes to the cleaning process. So with that, we'll dig in and see what the inside looks like. I am going to start with removal of this front cover. There's just a number of 1/2-inch bolts that kind of secure it to the main cover. One other thing I forgot to mention is cleanliness is probably as important as anything else. Kind of put some cardboard down, nice clean area, keep as much dirt out of the internal oily bits as you can. That'll keep the wear and tear to a minimum on the inside. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and I like doing everything with hand tools. I know there's plenty of battery, air-powered stuff out there now, but I guess I kind of like the feel of the wrench in the hand, knowing how much pressure it's taken to twist a bolt off or put a nut on. So you'll see me doing a lot of painstakingly slow assembly and disassembly with hand tools. And there we go. Our cover is off, and that may be more of a problem than we think as far as our bolt in there. You can kind of see where there has been a bit of a mishap. We'll get him out of there without too much trouble. I'm not so much worried about the bolt, but the casting's been compromised right here. And luckily I do have another casting from a utility tractor, which is the same. Only problem with the utility casting is it's not going to be as clean as this one. But I think what happened, at one time, this tractor had what's called a remote hydraulic unit on it. And the remote hydraulic unit has a little bracket that is held in with these two longer bolts right here. And somebody at one point in time took the remote hydraulic unit off and just put the bolts back in, and when they removed the bracket, they put longer bolts back into a shorter passageway, and it probably popped that casting out on the inside. So fun stuff on the inside. You never know what you're going to get. Now with the front cover removed, the next step is to remove the rockshaft housing, and that's going to be involving a bolt here, there, and there. Before we do that, before we take those bolts out, we want to disconnect this little rockshaft pivot arm up here. What's going to happen when the tractor's in use is this little control arm is going to move back and forth. That's going to move there. This is going to pivot on this point, and it's going to push this arm back and forth, which is going to rotate our rockshaft. So we need to pull this pin before we pull that back shaft housing off. Back in there for safekeeping. And then the rock shaft housing has half a dozen bolts holding it to the main valve body on the back, plus a bonus bolt hiding right up underneath here. Keep you on your toes. These are all 3/4. Top two are 13/16. So we'll work on popping those off. That should be all the 3/4 inch bolts. 3/4 head, I should say. You can see one of these is not like the other. This is the one that came out of the front hole up inside there. So sorry if that just gave you a case of whiplash moving the camera around. Let's take our big guys off here. Just making sure you can actually see what I'm doing over there. About to reveal the mysteries within. A little bummed about the main valve housing having the broken castings in it, but I've collected these tractors for decades. I shouldn't say decades, 10, 15 years. So I got plenty of extra parts. Hopefully our rear casting is in good shape. It's got this casting number, I'm not sure if you can see it, T12733T. That's a special one, and I'll try and show you why here in a minute if we can get this guy apart. Okay, and there goes the oil. Get that little bit of a leak picked up here. Try and drain everything out, but there's always going to be a little left behind. So, if you can see, we have that little control arm we pulled the pin off of. Goes back here to our little pivot. Pivots our rock shaft in the housing. So, that all looks pretty good. We'll continue with that guy after a little bit of cleanup. Okay, at this stage, I think we can go ahead and remove our hydraulic return line. It's just a matter of loosening this big nut enough that where our line is released, the pressure of a rubber bushing or fat O-ring in there. So we'll pull him out. Okay. Now, separate the rock shaft from the housing It's a matter of sliding it one direction or the other. How this is set up, it can only go one way. And I'm thinking, just by the feel, that it goes this way. So we're going to pull our arm retainers, maybe, so as not to damage any splines or threads. Put our bolt back in there, and there we go. We have kind of taken you can see the splines where this particular rock shaft pivot mechanism rides on. If we just keep moving through, that will be off the splines eventually, and we can pull the rock shaft the rest of the way out of the housing. And here, things don't bind. Oh. Keep tapping away here. Yeah, we are moving. We'll just fast forward through some of this on the video so you don't see me struggle. But there we go. Rock shaft housing. Not too bad a shape. And we have this little control arm that'll fall out. This will only fit one way on our shaft. And that's because of this spline right here, this big fat spline's only going to line up one way on our rock shaft. Right there. So we don't have to worry about which way it goes in or out or anything like that on this particular one. Earlier I mentioned that this rock shaft is special. This housing is special. And that is because of, you can see them, these bushings inside here. This was a change that John Deere made later in the 2-cylinder 420, well, only 430 tractor production. Prior to this change, the rock shaft rode right on the middle of the cast housing, and what would happen is you would get big time wear between the rock shaft and the rock shaft housing. So having those bushings in there greatly reduces the amount of wear that's there, and you can, if you look really close, you can see a faint little line that I'm sure your fingernail would pick up on, but it's nothing like some of the ones I've taken apart on some of the older tractors that have the old style, where it's just nothing more than metal on metal. So with everything here apart, I can work on cleaning up my housing. I will see about retrieving a replacement valve and front cover, and kind of have an update on that and try and post what things look like once I'm ready to start putting things back together. What we're going to do is replace some seals. These later models also had a lip type seal, which was nice, which you can kind of get a fair idea of on that shaft. It'll ride right in here on this opening. The seals weren't the best on the early model tractors either. What would happen a lot of times is you get leaks out of the rock shaft housing. So having one with good seals and bushings is what we want. All right, with the aid of editing, we are able to jump forward in time, and you can see I've gone out in my parts pile and brought in a few extra pieces. What I've done is found a utility Touch-O-Matic that I've kind of held on to from a parts tractor. Taking it apart, spared you the time lapse of me cleaning everything. My goal here is to get a couple pieces to replace the parts that I felt were a little compromised. Simple things like this chipped casting. New one, no chip. This could probably still work just fine. Well, if I got the extra though, why not put a good one on? Because I'd probably look at that as I sat on the tractor and think to myself, why didn't I fix that when I had the chance? The beauty of Dubuque tractors, the 420s, 430s, is across a lot of the models, many pieces are interchangeable. This Touch-O-Matic was from a utility tractor. Of course, this one's from our standard. The rockshaft housings are different, but pieces like this front casting are the same. So there's a lot of crossover. Internal rockshaft pivot arm looks to be fairly similar here. There is a little difference as far as the way this arm attaches. Ours had a pin that you could remove. This one appears to be fixed. We'll probably go back and use the original standard piece. Rockshaft housings are different. You can definitely appreciate that there's a difference between the two. Our standard has a pivot point where a bracket attaches here, where there's a whole different way of setting that up on the utility housing. This utility housing is another one that has those bushings in it, so that's a keeper because it keeps our rock shafts from wearing. Rock shafts are the same, tractor to tractor. The valve bodies are actually the same, and that's going to be one of the things we're also going to utilize. As you can see here, that casting there is not broken, where this one is, where we had that long bolt that was put in too far. Again, you could probably use this one, probably get away with it. It's a low pressure area there, and maybe just put a little bit of sealant across that when you put your housing on, but I figure if I've got the parts, do it once and do it right. So our next steps are going to be kind of pulling some extra seals and other components that are still attached, getting everything all cleaned up, and then we will move ahead to putting things back together. Before moving on to final cleaning and prep work to reassemble, we are going to disassemble a few more pieces, starting with our control valve. We're going to work on this little control arm. It's held in with some pins and clips. We'll start with this pin right here. I'm going to try and relieve some tension on this spring right here that's holding it back. Holds this control valve body back in its place. If I relieve that with that little hook, that should allow me to more easily pull my valve forward, exposing our little clip right here. Let's see. Right tool for the right job. Flip off that little clip, which is just a little horseshoe shape. And that should allow us to slide this pin out and free that linkage. I like to put these little pieces back where they came from. It's easier to keep track of what goes where later. I kind of shove that valve back in there for now. This shaft is held in by this little arm in here, and you can see there's a roll pin that holds that arm in place. One thing to note is the direction that the arm is. The arm is kind of in the same orientation as the arm on the outside, because I could see we're putting stuff back together. It might be really easy to put it on 180 degrees and find out that things aren't lining up right at a later point. So make note of that. I've got the video to document it, so I won't have to think about it later. I'm going to take a punch, my roll pin, I'm hitting something solid. It's probably the shaft itself. There we go. Okay. Use the old slide hammer approach. Here's another idea. Let's take our little bar and put some gentle pressure there. And we're free. So we can remember that our arms are more or less in the same orientation, upwards. Now, the question is, where did our pin go? Well, the mysteries. It's not wrapped around the bottom of our punch. There we are. Oh, shot out on the floor. All right, so I'll put that back in there for the time being. I'll set him off to the side. There is a pressure release on these valve bodies that is held in with a small little retaining ring. I don't know how well you can see that. These aren't necessarily needed to come out. I just, like I said, I try to be thorough with how I go about cleaning these things, prepping them. You should be able to take a punch, or not a punch, a tap. And this hole should have threads that you can clean out and put a slide hammer or tool of your choosing to remove this little cap, if you will, that's in there. Now the problem with this one is he is kind of loose. So if I'm trying to put my tap in there, the whole piece, I don't know if you can see it, is turning in there. So we're going to hope that that little bite that I have might be enough to get that guy out. I start by taking, oftentimes, a small bolt, and I will try to thread him in there. The tap didn't give me much of a starting point, but with that, I can usually take the hammer, tap that in, and then get a real teeny tiny screwdriver or some other sort of tool. Maybe if I can find the edge of the ring. That's the tricky part sometimes. I think I see him up there. Yeah, I see the edge up there, I think. There we go. If I try and pry him down, out, he just flew across the shop. We'll go find him in a second. Safety glasses, wear your safety glasses. Now, I should be able to pop this guy out. There's just the tension of an O-ring that holds that little cap in there. And the bolt, if you don't have a slide hammer, can act as a leverage point to sort of gently work it out. There we go. That was some good movement. And we got her. There's a spring holding the one piece in here, so once we do get this little cap out, there may be some pieces that pop out after it. Maybe they don't pop out at all. There it is. This is held in the tension of an O-ring, and you can see that O-ring is compromised. So if you were to reuse this valve, it was good to pull that, and that's probably why that piece was spinning in its seat in there. I'm just now looking at the camera, hoping you can see all this as I'm fiddling. Spring comes out. Then we have this little relief valve assembly. So there's that piece there. I'm going to set him there. I am probably not going to use this valve in the other valve body, or this rod, if you will, this piece here. It seems like it's a little tight in there. I can tap them forward from the back. Thing of note, if you pull this part out too far with this piece still installed, it'll advance and this piece will go forward and you will not be able to get this rod back in there. You'll have to pull this piece in order to slide the rod in. I found that out the hard way, but these two pieces slide against each other on the inside. You can kind of see a wear mark where that piece rides on the shaft there, on the inside of the piece, on the inside of the valve body. So we're going to keep that handy because there were two different styles, and I want to make sure I'm using the later style. I believe the other valve body has a later style, but we're going to see. I'm going to put this guy back in here. I always figure the things that are machined for one another should stay together. So that rod and this valve stay together there. I would pull this seal. We'll just do that on the other valve when we hop over to it. So this pretty much concludes what we take off of this guy. Thing of note, on the back here you'll see there is a spacer that's still in the valve body here. It's not on this side, but if you look at our rockshaft housing, the spacer's in here. And what's interesting about our replacement valve body is it has both of those spacers in it. So we'll either have to take one out of here or take one out of there. That's just stuff to pay attention to as you're moving along. So put that over there. And we will repeat the same job on this replacement valve body. Trying to pull that cap and then that pressure relief out of there. Now this one, I was able to put a tap in this one and clean him out pretty well. I don't think the O-ring's compromised on this one. So you can tap that hole out. It doesn't take much. Once your threads are clean, it makes it easier to put your little 3/8 bolt in there. And on this one, I'm probably going to have to tap with the hammer to advance it forward, because he is a little tighter in there. With him being advanced, we'll take our bolt back out. And you can see our ring fairly easy on this one, I think. If I take the camera in there, you can see the ring is right here, cap, and then we'll try and pop him out of there again. Okay. Just like that. Okay. No compromise to that O-ring, not as much anyway. Set him over there. Got our spring. This guy's not as eager to sneak back out of there. Let's see if we can convince him. The oil in this valve is a little dirtier, so I wonder if that plays a role in things being a little more sticky or not. Always the proper tool for the proper job. the proper tool, you just sort of fuss around until you get it to work. There we go. Screwdriver here. Like I said, this is real-time reality stuff here. None of that artificial magic stuff you might see in other situations. So there's that part. I still have that little valve up in there, and I may need to get a pair of real skinny needle nose pliers if I can't grab it with these two little forceps. See if those can sneak in there. And oh, look at that. Why didn't we start with that? Yes, you can see that's pretty filthy. So probably a good idea that we are cleaning out as much of this as possible, because we don't want none of that chunky stuff floating around when we go to actually put clean oil in the tractor and use this. So good deal. Put him back in there. Spring back on the end. Set him over there. Those pieces look the same. The one we just took out, the one from our earlier tractor, so they're pretty much the same thing. That, I've already taken the crank out of this one, as you can see. Might as well take our little control rod out of here. Again, we'll release the tension on the spring. Put him back in there. Yeah, all that gunk that's in there. Not necessarily the best stuff for a hydraulic system. But, and that leaves us with, I believe the spring is held in here by this little, there might be like a little pin that goes down in here that's held in with a lock nut. So we're not gonna take him out at this point. I think he's held in there, and we can always grab him if need be. But there is this seal right here where that control arm comes out. You can go about removing seals, your method of choice. I usually just kind of get in there with a pry tool of sorts and lever away at it. I'm not worried about damaging the seal because it's obviously junk. And there you go. So, seal's out. Valve body control arms are out. Overpressure valve is out. We'll do some more cleaning up. Having seen how dirty our check valve and port was when we pulled that from our valve housing earlier, I decided it might be a good idea to check this bypass valve here in the back as well. I normally don't go through all this with the oils clean, but this valve was a little dirtier. It's worth a little further investigation. I don't know if you can see our parts breakdown in the parts book. This guy right here, that is that little check valve that we pulled out earlier. We're going to investigate this little bypass valve in the back of the housing. So there should be the clip, the plug, the O-ring, a spring, and then the valve assembly down inside there. So let's see what we got. I already went ahead and pulled the clip. It's right there. I kind of cheated a little bit and also brought our plug out a little bit. Earlier, I should have put a couple washers on our bolt to make prying this plug out a little easier with our little pry bar. That should make a big difference as far as being able to get a little purchase on the bolt head. This should just pop right out because I cheated a little bit for the theatrics. Pop that out. There's a little spring. And there should be inside there. I don't know if we can get the light a bit better. Oh yeah, there is our bypass valve with some crud as well. So it's probably a good idea that we took this extra step. Pull this little guy out as much as we can. And maybe have to I think it's getting caught up on all the crud in there, and as you can see, I don't have the best bite. We're going to try and clean a little bit of that crud out of there to get our valve to pass out, maybe a little bit easier. Yeah. Oh yeah. See if that's enough to get us out. Getting closer. There we are. Yeah, you can definitely see there's all kinds of material on there that does not need to be in a hydraulic system. And we'll give that a good cleaning. Everything should clean up nicely. I almost forgot. We have the piston in our valve body that we want to remove for proper cleaning and what have you. So I'm going to take a little bit of air pressure. I'm going to put it in our high pressure port. Because we took everything apart, the air is just going to blow through. I put our control rod valve back in there, and I'm going to put my thumb over the pressure release here to see if that's enough to get where we can get our piston to come back out. Everything's going to be in the way here. Let's see what we get. Maybe I can give you a bird's eye view. Hopefully this doesn't shoot out and hit the camera. Just like that. How's that for action? Yeah, we're ready for final cleaning before we take that step for reassembly. And with that, we'll conclude the disassembly video. I'll probably use some solvent to wash these parts up. Maybe put a little rust preventative on the extra valve. And next time, I hope to have clean, shiny parts on the table. Nice clean work surface, and I'll have a spread of all the proper gaskets and seals and such that we will use to put everything back together. I'll even make a little list with the part numbers and stuff in case anyone's curious. I was kind of shocked that John Deere still offers some of the pieces and some of the gaskets and the seals. The seals aren't too bad. The front cover gasket's not too bad. This gasket that goes between the rock shaft and the valve body, you can still get it, but they're pretty proud of it. They want like $300 or something for that gasket. So good thing I bought one over a decade ago. But with that, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll have something clean and shiny to kind of treat you with come next video.